The waiting room was silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes every tick of the clock feel louder than it should. I sat alone, gripping the folded test forms in my hand, staring at nothing and everything at once. Then I heard them, 3 soft, synchronized whispers, almost too gentle to catch. "Pretend you're our father," they said, and the words hung in the air like a challenge I wasn't ready for. I looked up expecting a trick, expecting mischief, but their eyes were wide, vulnerable, filled with hope. In that instant, the sterile walls and my solitude became meaningless. Something was shifting, quietly, impassibly, and I could feel the weight of the truth that had yet to arrive. I wake before the sun, not because I like mornings, but because the quiet demands it. The apartment is still, empty except for the hum of the fridge and the soft ticking of the wall clock. I make the coffee black strong, the aroma filling the small kitchen, and I check the calendar. Work errands, bills, everything lined up neatly, predictably. Life feels manageable this way, measured, controlled. The girls, 3 little whirlwinds with voices too loud for the space, are usually still asleep. I watch them through the monitor for a moment, noting the rise and fall of their chests. Even in sleep, they carry the energy of a world I can barely keep pace with. I trust them, or at least I trust that I know them, that I understand their rhythms, their tiny personalities. At work, the same routine holds me steady. Colleagues smile politely, conversations remain superficial. I'm a quiet presence, respected in a low-key way, my diligence noted but rarely lauded. I trust this predictability, it comforts me. After work, the walk home is familiar, the worn steps, the small park with its faded benches. The air smells of early evening, of damp earth and distant traffic. I pass the neighbors' houses, nodding to familiar faces, small waves exchanged without words. Trust is woven into these moments, invisible but tangible. Back in the apartment, dinner is simple. I check in with the girls as they finish homework, making sure homework is done, clothes are ready for tomorrow. I notice their quirks, the way one chews her pencil while thinking, the other hums softly to herself, the third tapping her foot impatiently. These tiny details are anchors, threads of trust and understanding that I hold onto tightly. By bedtime, the apartment quiets again. I tuck each girl in, listening to their whispered goodnights, their small hands gripping mine for a fleeting moment before letting go. The silence returns, comforting yet fragile. I sit in the living room, the weight of responsibility balanced by the satisfaction of order. I trust in the rhythm of this life, in my ability to protect and provide, unaware that the cracks are already forming around the edges. The first unease comes quietly, almost imperceptibly. It's a glance, a pause in a conversation, a note of hesitation that feels out of place. At the office, one of my colleagues, usually cheerful, avoids my eyes during a meeting. I notice it, but I dismiss it. Perhaps she's tired, or maybe it's nothing at all. I tell myself I'm reading too much into things. At home, the girls begin to ask questions that make my chest tighten. "Why do we have to wait?" one of them whispers as we sit down for dinner. I answer, carefully measured, but I sense there's more behind her words. A subtle probing, a curiosity tinged with something I don't yet understand. I brush it off as normal childhood inquisitiveness. Even small errands feel off. At the grocery store, someone in line seems to watch me longer than necessary. I shrug it away. At the park, a parent gives me a fleeting, scrutinizing look as my daughters play. The weight of it is minor yet persistent, like a shadow brushing against the edges of perception. That evening, a phone call catches me off guard. It's brief, the voice polite but firm, mentioning details I shouldn't yet know. I hang up, a cold tingle running down my spine. Nothing concrete, just an uneasy thread tugging at the normalcy I cling to. When I tuck the girls into bed, their whispered giggles are quieter, cautious. I hear them exchange words I don't fully catch, the tone serious, almost conspiratorial. I tell myself it's imagination, youthful games. Still, a small knot forms in my stomach, a warning I can't shake. Something feels slightly wrong. And for the first time in weeks, my trust in the rhythm of life wavers. The uneasy feeling I'd dismissed begins to sharpen into something undeniable. It starts with small inconsistencies, the way my oldest daughter recalls a conversation differently than I remember, or how one of the girls reacts to a question as if they've been coached. At first, I tell myself I'm imagining patterns, that children misremember or exaggerate, but the repeated misalignments gnaw at me, impossible to ignore. At work, a client calls with a concern that I never authorized, something that seems trivial yet carries a hint of manipulation. I follow up, only to find that the paperwork has been altered. I stare at the documents, heart pounding, realizing that what I thought was routine oversight might not be accidental. The lines of trust blur as I consider the possibility that someone is quietly undermining me. Back home, the girls' behavior shifts subtly. They whisper when I enter the room, quickly hiding notes or glances. A folded piece of paper slips from a textbook, words scribbled in childish handwriting, but with a tone that unsettles me. Do not tell him everything. I pick it up, hands trembling, feeling the first true pang of suspicion. Even casual conversations are laced with moments that prick at my intuition. A friend mentions something the girls shared about our plans that I never discussed with them. The repetition of these moments, a glance here, a comment there, forms a mosaic of doubt. I begin to watch closely, my mind alert, noticing everything from subtle gestures to hushed tones. That night, as I lay awake, I replay the day's small disturbances in my mind. The laughter in their rooms, the way they avoid my gaze, the hints of secrecy, they are not random. The realization settles in with a heavy weight. The world I've relied on, the trust I've nurtured, is no longer unblemished. The first red flags have appeared, and I cannot unsee them. The unease I felt yesterday intensifies, and with it comes a creeping sense of isolation. I try to voice my concerns quietly, testing the waters, mentioning small inconsistencies in the girls' stories. Instead of acknowledgement, I am met with laughter or gentle reproach. "You're imagining things," one of the girls says, her tone sugary, almost mocking. "It didn't happen like that." Even the smallest doubts are dismissed, and I feel my certainty being chipped away, replaced by self-questioning. At work, the subtle manipulations continue. A colleague hints that I misread a report or misremembered instructions. They do it casually with a smile, but I feel the sting of implied incompetence. The moments pile up, each one a small but deliberate push toward doubting my own judgment. Every whispered correction, every patronizing comment, compounds the psychological weight pressing on me. At home, the girls are experts at shifting attention. One drops a toy in the hallway, another asks a question just as I begin a difficult conversation. Their timing feels orchestrated, almost precise, and I sense that they are testing boundaries, probing how far they can push without consequence. When I try to confront them, they tilt their heads, eyes wide, claiming innocence. "We didn't mean anything," they insist. But the tension in the room, the silence after their words, tells me otherwise. The gaslighting is relentless. It is not loud or confrontational, it is quiet, methodical, and invasive. My perception of events is subtly undermined. I begin to second-guess myself, wondering if my suspicions are paranoia. I replay conversations in my mind, questioning whether I misheard, misremembered, or overreacted. Each instance of dismissal erodes the clarity I thought I had, leaving me uncertain and wary. By nightfall, the emotional pressure is nearly suffocating. I sit alone, reflecting on the day's interactions, realizing that the subtle cruelty is deliberate. The girls' whispers, the gentle reproofs, the timing of misdirection, they are not accidental. The power imbalance is stark. I am the adult, yet they have mastered a quiet control, eroding my confidence without ever raising a hand. My heart is heavy, my mind alert, and the sense of betrayal grows, leaving me unsettled as sleep finally claims me. The following morning, I wake to a quiet house, the faint hum of the heater filling the spaces between the walls. There is an unfamiliar weight in the air, a tension I can almost touch. The girls, usually giggling and whispering, are unusually still, each absorbed in a small corner of the room, eyes darting toward me with subtle calculation. It is then I notice a letter lying partially hidden under the edge of the couch. At first I hesitate, unsure if I should reach for it, but curiosity outweighs caution. The envelope is plain, formal, the handwriting unfamiliar. My fingers tremble slightly as I unfold the paper. A legal notice, clearly intended for them, the girls detailing assets, guardianship, and a series of clauses that had been kept from me. My breath catches. The words confirm what my intuition had whispered for weeks. There has been manipulation, carefully crafted and concealed. The girls, with their innocent smiles and whispered stories, had been part of a larger design. I retreat to the kitchen, paper clutched in hand, trying to piece together the fragments of truth. It is not a scream-inducing revelation, no dramatic confrontation, but a quiet, undeniable exposure. I reread the lines, each one cutting through layers of denial, revealing intentional omissions and quiet subversions. The lawyer's words, dry and meticulous, leave little room for misinterpretation. What I had thought were minor inconsistencies, playful lies, or innocent forgetfulness now carry weight. They were small pieces of a puzzle, and now the image is clear. The girls enter the room shortly after, pretending to be engaged in an art project, their voices light, teasing. Yet in their eyes I catch a flicker of anticipation, or perhaps amusement at the unfolding awareness. They do not explain, they do not comment. Instead, the truth hangs in the air, heavy and unspoken, and I feel the subtle power shift. I am no longer just the parent trying to guide them. I am a witness to deliberate orchestration. Hours pass in a haze of observation and quiet reflection. Every gesture, every whisper, every playful deception I had overlooked now carries a new meaning. I begin cataloguing the moments, mentally connecting the dots, seeing the small manipulations with frightening clarity. Each instance, innocent at the time, was part of a carefully maintained illusion designed to test, to tease, and to hide intention until the right moment. As evening falls, I sit with the letter spread before me, a tangible sign of what had been hidden. The emotional weight is undeniable. There is no anger, no outburst, only the quiet ache of realization, a recognition of betrayal filtered through innocence. I understand now that exposure does not always come with confrontation. Sometimes it arrives in fragments, subtle and indirect, yet powerful enough to shift everything. And in that quiet understanding, I feel the first stirrings of resolve, tempered by caution as I prepare for what comes next. The days that follow are not marked by loud confrontations, but by an intensifying tension, subtle yet undeniable. I notice it in the way the triplets exchange glances before speaking, the way their small hands linger near objects I reach for, almost in anticipation. Every interaction feels like a test, a quiet probe to measure my reactions, my patience, and my understanding. The letter from the lawyer has become a constant shadow in my mind, the weight of its implications pressing on every decision I make. I try to maintain normalcy, keeping routines steady, yet the girls push boundaries in ways I cannot ignore. One morning I find that items I had set aside for myself, the few personal things that anchor me, have been moved, hidden, or repurposed in ways that hint at observation. Their whispers float from the next room, soft and teasing. "Do you see now? We thought you'd notice." The innocence in their tone masks a calculated awareness, a quiet orchestration that leaves me unsettled. At work, I carry the tension like a secret burden. My focus wavers, and every casual comment from colleagues about parenting or responsibility stings with unintended resonance. I begin documenting everything at home, noting times, movements, and behaviors, constructing a record in case the patterns escalate further. The girls, perceptive as ever, seem to sense the shift in my awareness. Their play becomes more deliberate, their questions sharper, designed to elicit responses that reveal more than they pretend to seek. Then comes a turning point, a call from the lawyer, sudden and precise. Her voice, professional but tinged with concern, delivers an unanticipated warning. "Some clauses may require immediate attention. I would advise presence in the house tomorrow morning." The words are carefully neutral, yet they reverberate through the silence of my evening. The system, the very adults I had trusted to mediate fairness, is now subtly enforcing accountability, acting in ways that magnify the stakes. By the next morning, the atmosphere at home is taut. The girls greet me with exaggerated smiles, shadows of mischief dancing in their eyes. The letter, once a hidden threat, is now a tangible presence on the dining table. I move cautiously, aware that every step, every glance, every tone of voice is being assessed. There is no dramatic explosion of emotion, yet each moment carries escalating pressure. Their whispers, gentle prods, and orchestrated distractions create a complex web of expectation and observation. Even ordinary tasks become exercises in careful navigation. Breakfast conversations are laced with subtle tests, casual remarks that force attention to detail. They observe my reactions, noting hesitation, surprise, or any flicker of uncertainty. The lawyer's impending involvement hangs over these moments, turning everyday interactions into exercises of psychological endurance. I realize that escalation does not need chaos. It thrives in quiet, relentless layering of small pressures that compound into an undeniable sense of urgency. As evening approaches, I sit quietly, tracing patterns in my mind, feeling the full weight of what has begun. The girls, unaware of the depth of my awareness, continue their subtle orchestration, weaving innocence with intent. I understand now that escalation is not about confrontation. It is about pressure, persistence, and control, and I am squarely in its path. The quiet storm of realization settles over me, preparing me for the next stage where emotional boundaries will be tested, and the truth, in its full complexity, can no longer be ignored. The breaking point doesn't arrive with a scream or a collapse. It comes quietly, almost imperceptibly, as the accumulated weight of the past weeks presses down. I sit at the kitchen table, the letter from the lawyer lying open before me, its words stark, precise, and final. My hands tremble slightly as I reread the phrases that I had been trying to put out of mind, phrases that now strike me with the force of undeniable truth. For months I tried to maintain composure, to convince myself that everything was manageable, that my trust in the system, in people, had not been misplaced. But now the illusion crumbles. The triplets, sensing the shift, hover near me with a careful attentiveness, their wide eyes reflecting both concern and curiosity. They speak softly, their voices laced with the familiarity of playful innocence, yet beneath it is the sharp edge of expectation. Every whispered question, every small hand gesture, reminds me of the constant observation, the subtle manipulations I had tried to ignore. I realize painfully that their actions were never just childlike. They were deliberate, a quiet orchestration that forced me to confront realities I had been unwilling to face. Memories of earlier interactions flood my mind, the casual remarks, the hidden glances, the small tests of patience and awareness. Each event, which once seemed innocuous or dismissible, now aligns into a clear pattern of calculated intent. My emotional control, honed over years of personal restraint, begins to falter as I accept the full scale of the situation. I feel both betrayed and exposed, not by dramatic acts of malice, but by the quiet, relentless truth that had been building beneath the surface. Tears come without warning, brief and sharp, unnoticed by the girls who continue their careful orchestration. I let them fall not out of despair, but as a release, a recognition that the weight of reality cannot be carried in silence any longer. The lawyer's words replay in my mind, responsibility, accountability, and the obligations I had assumed without question. I had tried to maintain control, to navigate the subtle pressures, but now I see clearly that my restraint alone was insufficient. The room feels both confining and clarifying. Every detail, the ticking clock, the faint hum of appliances, the soft whispers of the triplets, amplifies my awareness of the stakes. The truth, which I had hoped might be manageable in fragments, now demands recognition in its entirety. I acknowledge the cost, the trust I placed, the patience I extended, the boundaries I maintained. All of it must now be reconciled with the undeniable reality. Even as the emotional strain peaks, a strange calm follows. The collapse is internal, a quiet acceptance rather than an outward display. I understand that this breaking point is necessary, that only through acknowledgement of the full scope of betrayal and manipulation can the path forward be defined. The triplets, oblivious to the depth of my realization, continue their presence with an innocence that both torments and comforts me, a reminder of what is at stake and the enduring responsibility that remains. By the end of the day, I sit with a clarity I had not expected. The weight of weeks of subtle manipulation, the silent tests, and the legal implications converge into a single, undeniable truth. I am at my emotional breaking point, and yet paradoxically it is here that I begin to see the contours of resolution, the quiet understanding that this chapter, painful as it is, must be endured fully to move forward. The morning light filters through the blinds, casting thin, deliberate lines across the living room floor. The quiet has shifted from uncertainty to inevitability. I sit at the dining table, the documents spread before me, each sheet a marker of choices made, of expectations ignored, and of manipulations that now feel painfully precise. The lawyer's presence earlier had been formal, almost clinical, but the weight of his words lingers in the air, clarity, responsibility, and the undeniable truths that I had resisted acknowledging. The triplets cluster near me, unusually still, sensing the tension without fully understanding its source. Their whispered requests from days past, their insistence that I pretend, take on a different weight now. I realize the extent to which their games were intertwined with my own willingness to accommodate, to protect, to assume trust without verification. Every action I had taken to maintain harmony is now reframed as part of the broader pattern I had overlooked. Calls begin to arrive, subtle at first, confirmations, clarifications, and notices that the systems I trusted are now responding to the facts I had tried to manage privately. Each message, though brief, carries a ripple effect. Tasks I had postponed, concerns I had minimized, and warnings I had ignored all converge into tangible consequences. I feel the sting of accountability not as punishment, but as reality asserting itself firmly. The triplets watch silently as I move through the motions, signing documents, making phone calls, adjusting schedules, all the while holding an internal reckoning. The cost of earlier inaction, of trust misplaced, is now apparent in the structured responses from those who wield authority. There is no drama, no confrontation. The consequences unfold quietly, methodically, like dominoes falling in precise sequence. In the midst of it all, I notice small details, the folded papers, the ink stains, the faint hum of the refrigerator, that anchor me to reality. The triplets, eyes wide and attentive, remind me that my choices have implications beyond paperwork. The quiet weight of responsibility presses down, but there is a strange steadiness to it, a sense that acknowledgement of truth, even when uncomfortable, is necessary. By mid-afternoon, the outlines of resolution become visible. The heirs, their expectations, and their legal representation will now operate within boundaries I had once assumed I could navigate quietly. The impact of truth, once delayed, has arrived fully. The triplets, sensing closure in the air, begin to shift, their curiosity replaced by the calm rhythm of ordinary activity. I sit back, exhausted but grounded, understanding that while the consequences are real and persistent, they are neither chaotic nor cruel. They are simply the natural outcomes of choices made and truths acknowledged. The day ends with a quiet settling, a balance restored not by spectacle, but by the clarity that comes from facing reality. I am no longer negotiating shadows. The framework is defined, boundaries enforced, and the hidden manipulations exposed. Consequences, I realize, are not vindictive, they are simply truth made manifest. Evening falls softly, the golden light spilling through the windows, settling over the quiet house. The triplets sit cross-legged on the floor, their chatter muted, their energy calmer than earlier. Papers, calls, and obligations have given way to a slow rhythm, almost ordinary yet weighted with the knowledge of what has passed. I sit nearby, observing them, feeling the lingering pulse of responsibility and the quiet sting of lessons learned. There is no triumph in this room, no sense of victory, only a steady acceptance that truths have been faced, mistakes acknowledged, and boundaries set. Outside, the world continues indifferent, yet inside this space, a balance has been restored. The whispers, the demands, and the chaos have subsided, leaving a contemplative calm. I breathe, letting the silence settle around me. Nothing is celebrated, nothing is dramatized. The story ends not with applause, but with the heavy, quiet weight of reality.